Today, we explore a subject as mysterious as it is familiar, the human mind. How can understanding psychology, the science of thought and behavior, help us become the best version of ourselves? Not through tricks or hacks, but through awareness, intention, and gentle change. From the power of habits and emotions to the science of focus, motivation, and resilience, we'll uncover how small mental shifts can unlock immense transformation. Because being your best self isn't about becoming someone new. It's about understanding who you already are and learning how to guide that mind toward growth. The mind is both familiar and unfathomable. Every thought, every memory, every flicker of imagination arises from this delicate organ we call the brain. Yet the experience of mind is something far greater than biology alone. It's where consciousness emerges, that quiet inner space where we observe, reflect, and decide who we are. For centuries, philosophers and scientists alike have tried to define it. Is the mind a separate entity from the brain, or simply the brain's activity, observing itself? Modern neuroscience suggests that what we call mind is the sum of countless interactions between neurons, roughly 86 billion of them, communicating through electric impulses. Yet, within that network lies something wondrous: awareness, the ability not only to perceive the world, but to know that we are perceiving it. And this awareness, this consciousness, is the foundation of self-improvement. Before we can change, we must notice our habits, our emotions, our patterns of thought. The mind is like a lens. It can be cloudy with confusion or clear with insight, but either way, it is always capable of focus. To understand the mind is to realize it is not fixed, it's fluid, adaptive, alive. Every moment, your brain reshapes itself through a process called neuroplasticity, strengthening the connections you use most often. So every time you reflect, learn, or practice mindfulness, you are quite literally rewiring who you are. The nature of the mind, then, is transformation. It observes, it adapts, it grows. And with awareness, patience, and compassion, you can guide it towards the person you wish to become. Every moment, the world unfolds before us, a tapestry of color, sound, and sensation. But what we perceive is not the world itself. It is a version created inside the mind. Our thoughts act as filters, interpreting, labeling, and judging everything we experience. When we think, "That person doesn't like me," or "I always fail at this," our brain begins to search for proof. This is called confirmation bias, the tendency to notice only what aligns with what we already believe. Slowly, the story we tell ourselves becomes the world we live in. Modern psychology and neuroscience show us that perception is a construction, a conversation between our senses and our expectations. The brain doesn't simply record reality, it predicts it. This predictive coding shapes what we notice, what we feel, and even what we remember. That's why two people can witness the same event and walk away with entirely different truths. But here's the beautiful part. If thought shapes perception, then changing our thinking can reshape reality itself. Cognitive behavioral therapy, one of psychology's most effective methods, is built on this idea. By challenging distorted thoughts, "I'm not good enough," "nothing ever works out," we teach the brain to see differently. And when we see differently, we feel differently. Our emotions calm, our actions shift, our world expands. So, to master your mind, start by noticing your thoughts, not as facts, but as possibilities. Ask, "Is this helpful? Is this true?" Because reality is not just what happens to you, it's how your mind interprets it. And in that awareness lies the quiet power to change everything. Emotions are often misunderstood. We call them good or bad, positive or negative, as if joy is to be welcomed and anger to be avoided. But emotions are not enemies or allies. They are messengers. Each one carries information, a signal from the mind and body, guiding us toward understanding. Fear, for instance, isn't there to paralyze us. It's the body's way of saying, something here might harm you. Anger, though uncomfortable, often points to boundaries being crossed. Sadness tells us what matters, what we value, what we've lost. And joy? Joy reminds us of what nourishes our spirit. In neuroscience, emotions arise from a complex interplay between the amygdala, which detects importance or threat, and the prefrontal cortex, which helps interpret and regulate those signals. They are not irrational storms, but finely tuned evolutionary tools, helping us respond to the world long before words can. The trouble comes when we suppress or ignore them. Unheard emotions don't disappear. They grow louder, resurfacing as anxiety, frustration, or exhaustion. The solution isn't control, but curiosity. When an emotion arises, ask gently, "What are you trying to tell me?" This act of listening turns reactivity into reflection, and reflection becomes wisdom. So rather than fighting your emotions, learn their language. Each feeling, from the gentlest calm to the sharpest pain, is a messenger, whispering about your needs, your limits, your values. By hearing them, you begin to understand yourself, and that, perhaps, is the quiet foundation of peace. Much of what we do each day happens without much thought. From the way we brush our teeth, to how we check our phones, to the routes we walk and the words we say, our lives are guided by habits. They are the brain's way of saving energy, turning repeated actions into effortless patterns. Deep within the brain lies a region called the basal ganglia, the quiet architect of habit. When a behavior is repeated often enough, this network encodes it as a routine, allowing the conscious mind to rest. That's why once you've learned to drive, your body seems to remember the motions, even when your mind drifts elsewhere. Every habit follows a simple loop: cue, routine, reward. The cue triggers the behavior, the routine is the action itself, and the reward reinforces it. Over time, the loop becomes automatic. Understanding this cycle gives you power, because to change a habit, you don't need to erase it. You only need to reshape the loop. Replace the routine, keep the cue and reward. Instead of scrolling through your phone when stressed, try breathing deeply. Instead of late-night snacking, make tea or write a thought down. Each repetition forges new neural pathways. But here's the secret. Change happens not through force, but consistency. Tiny shifts, repeated daily, compound into transformation. Habits are not prisons. They are programmable scripts. And when guided with awareness, they become the invisible architecture of your best self. So, each morning, ask yourself, what do I do without thinking? Because in the patterns you repeat lies the person you become. The human mind is powerful, but not perfect. We like to believe we see the world as it truly is. Yet what we see is filtered through invisible distortions called cognitive biases. These are the shortcuts our brains take to save time, to simplify, to make sense of an overwhelming world. And while they help us survive, they also quietly shape our mistakes, our judgments, and our beliefs. Take the confirmation bias, our tendency to seek evidence that supports what we already believe. Or the availability bias, where we judge something as more likely simply because it's easier to recall. Even the halo effect, where one good trait, say confidence, makes us assume someone is kind, competent, even trustworthy. These biases come from evolution. Our ancestors didn't have time to analyze. They needed to act fast. A rustle in the grass could be wind or a predator. Those who assumed danger survived. But in the modern world, this same wiring can cloud our reasoning. We form opinions, trust first impressions, and defend ideas not because they're true, but because they feel familiar. The beauty of psychology is that awareness itself begins to loosen their grip. By noticing bias, gently, without judgment, we can pause before reacting. We can ask, is this a fact or a feeling? Over time, this pause becomes clarity. You won't erase bias. It's part of being human. But you can outsmart it with reflection, empathy, and curiosity. Because when you learn to see your own blind spots, the world grows a little wider and your mind a little freer. Attention is the currency of the mind. Where it flows, reality seems to sharpen, colors brighten, sounds deepen, thoughts take form. Yet in the age of constant stimulation, our attention has become fragmented, traded, competed for, pulled in 1,000 directions at once. But attention is more than focus, it is life itself. Neuroscientists describe it as the brain spotlight, a limited resource illuminating one small portion of the vast sensory world at a time. What you attend to becomes your experience. Everything else fades quietly into the background. This selectivity has deep consequences. If you dwell on worries, your brain strengthens neural circuits for anxiety. If you focus on gratitude, those same pathways wire for calm. Over time, attention literally sculpts the brain, a process confirmed by studies on neuroplasticity. Meditation, for example, has been shown to thicken the prefrontal cortex, the region linked to awareness and emotional regulation. But the secret isn't to force attention, it's to guide it, gently. Try noticing your breath for a few moments. Feel the air move in and out. When your mind wanders, as it will, simply bring it back. Each return is a quiet act of training, a small reclaiming of your mind from the chaos around you. In truth, what you pay attention to grows. It becomes the texture of your reality. So ask yourself, what deserves my focus today? Because your attention is precious, and wherever it rests, your life follows. What drives us to act, to move, to strive, to create? The answer lies deep within the brain, in a chemical messenger called dopamine. Often misunderstood as the pleasure molecule, dopamine isn't about reward itself, but about anticipation. It fuels our desire to seek, to explore, to pursue something just beyond our reach. Imagine seeing a slice of cake or hearing the ping of a new message. That small surge of excitement, that's dopamine at work. It rises before the reward, urging you forward, whispering, "Go on, there's something good ahead." This system evolved to help our ancestors survive, to find food, partners, and safety. But in today's world, it can be hijacked. Social media, fast food, online shopping, they all deliver rapid bursts of dopamine without real fulfillment. Each hit trains the brain to crave more, yet feel less satisfied over time. True motivation, however, comes from a slower, steadier rhythm. The pursuit of meaningful goals. When dopamine aligns with purpose, it becomes sustainable. Psychologists call this intrinsic motivation, doing something not for a prize, but for the joy of growth itself. You can nurture it by setting small, achievable challenges, celebrating progress, not just results, and resting when needed. In this balance, dopamine becomes your ally. A spark of curiosity, not a chain of craving. So the next time you feel inspired, notice that little lift inside your mind. That's dopamine, inviting you to move forward, not toward endless wanting, but toward becoming. For much of our lives, we're told that talent defines us, that some people are born gifted and others are not. But modern psychology paints a far more hopeful picture. one captured in the idea of the growth mindset. Coined by psychologist Carol Dweck, this concept reveals that our abilities, intelligence, creativity, even confidence, are not fixed traits but flexible ones. The brain strengthens with challenge, practice, and persistence. In other words, effort doesn't just lead to growth, it creates it. In contrast, a fixed mindset sees failure as proof of limitation. I'm just not good at this. But a growth mindset views the same struggle as feedback, a signal that learning is happening. Each mistake becomes a stepping stone, each setback a lesson in disguise. This shift isn't about blind optimism, it's about self-trust. When you believe you can improve, you engage differently. You take risks, ask questions, persist when things get difficult, and slowly, that belief becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. Studies show that students with a growth mindset not only achieve more, but experience less anxiety and greater resilience. They don't fear challenge, they seek it. So next time you find yourself thinking, I can't do this, try adding one small word, yet. I can't do this, yet. It's a reminder that growth is not an event, it's a process. The mind, after all, is like a muscle. It strengthens with use, with patience, with care, and in choosing to grow, you become living proof of its potential. We've all felt it, that quiet resistance before starting something important. A task sits before you, simple enough, yet your mind hesitates, drifts, finds anything else to do. This is procrastination, not a failure of willpower, but a subtle dance between emotion and avoidance. At its heart, procrastination isn't about laziness, it's about discomfort. When we face a task that feels overwhelming, uncertain, or dull, the brain interprets it as a threat to our emotional state. The amygdala, our ancient alarm system, activates, flooding us with unease. To escape that feeling, we seek relief, a distraction, a scroll, a snack. For a moment it works, but then the guilt returns, and the cycle begins again. The key to breaking it lies in reducing the emotional weight of starting. Psychologists call this the 5-minute rule. Commit to doing just 5 minutes of the task. Often, the hardest part is simply beginning, and once momentum builds, resistance fades. Another tool is self-compassion. Studies show that people who forgive themselves for past procrastination are more likely to move forward productively. Shame freezes us. Kindness frees us. And finally, reconnect with why the task matters. When meaning outweighs discomfort, motivation awakens. So the next time you catch yourself delaying, pause, take a breath, and start small. Not with pressure, but with presence. Because procrastination isn't a flaw to be fought, it's a signal to be understood. And when you listen, you learn not only how to work, but how to care for your mind while doing it. Stress is not the enemy we often believe it to be. It is the body's ancient alarm, a call to action, honed through millions of years of survival. When a threat appears, the brain signals the hypothalamus, which releases stress hormones like cortisol and adrenaline, preparing you to fight, flee, or focus. Your heart beats faster, your breath deepens, the body awakens. In short bursts, stress is essential. It sharpens the mind, fuels performance, and strengthens memory. The danger comes when it never ends. Chronic stress keeps the body in a constant state of alert, wearing down the immune system, disrupting sleep, and dulling concentration. Over time, the mind grows tired, anxious, brittle. Yet, within this tension lies a hidden strength, resilience. Resilience is not the absence of stress, but the ability to recover from it, to bend without breaking. And it can be trained. Simple habits help. Deep breathing lowers cortisol. Mindfulness brings you back from spiraling thoughts to the safety of the present moment. Regular movement, even a short walk, resets the nervous system. Connection too is powerful. Sharing your struggles lightens the load your body silently carries. Psychologists call this the stress paradox, the idea that facing manageable challenges actually builds resilience. Like a muscle, the mind strengthens when stretched, but only if given time to rest and repair. So don't strive for a life without stress. Strive instead to build a body and mind that can meet it and recover. Because resilience isn't about never falling. It's about knowing you can rise again. Imagine for a moment a world where every emotion, every reaction, every word is understood before it's expressed. That is the essence of emotional intelligence, the quiet skill of recognizing, understanding, and managing both your own emotions and those of others. Psychologist Daniel Goleman popularized this idea, showing that emotional intelligence, or EQ, often matters more than raw IQ when it comes to success, relationships, and leadership. It's built on 4 pillars: self-awareness, self-regulation, empathy, and social skill. It begins with awareness, noticing your emotions without being ruled by them. Then comes regulation, the ability to pause before reacting, to choose your response with care. Empathy follows, the art of seeing the world through another's eyes, feeling without losing yourself. And finally, social skill, the practice of using that awareness to connect, to resolve, to inspire. Neuroscience shows that the prefrontal cortex and the amygdala work together here. Logic and emotion in dialogue. When balanced, we become both thoughtful and kind, decisive yet compassionate. High EQ doesn't mean avoiding feelings. It means listening to them, translating emotion into understanding. It's the quiet pause before replying, the deep breath before judgment, the gentle curiosity that turns conflict into connection. In a world that often rewards speed and certainty, emotional intelligence asks for something slower, presence. It's what allows us not only to understand others, but to understand ourselves. And when we do, our relationships deepen, our communication softens, and the spaces between us begin to heal. There's a voice that speaks to you every day, softly, constantly, often unnoticed. It narrates your choices, your doubts, your dreams. This is your self-talk, the invisible dialogue that quietly scopes your confidence, your self-image, and even your future. Psychologists have long known that our inner monologue shapes how we interpret the world. When we stumble, it can either whisper, "I'm learning," or "I'm failing." Over time, those subtle phrases carve deep grooves in our thinking, forming either pathways of possibility or walls of limitation. Research in cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, shows that reframing self-talk can shift mood, motivation, and performance. For instance, instead of saying, "I can't handle this," try, I can learn to handle this." That single word, learn, invites growth instead of defeat. Athletes, leaders, and creatives all use this principle. They know confidence isn't about never doubting. It's about choosing a kinder, steadier voice when doubt appears. Neuroscience tells us that self-directed speech activates the same regions as external communication. In essence, the brain listens to itself. What we tell ourselves, it begins to believe. So speak to yourself as you would to a friend. Replace harsh critique with encouragement. Turn "I should have" into "next time, I'll try." It's not self-delusion, it's self-direction. Because the words you use inside your mind become the atmosphere you live in. And when that inner voice grows gentle, supportive, and clear, confidence doesn't need to be forced. It begins to grow naturally, quietly from within. Take a slow, deep breath. Feel your chest rise and fall. In this small, effortless act, your mind and body are speaking to each other. For centuries, philosophers and healers sensed this connection. Today, science confirms it. The body and mind are not separate. They are one continuous system, constantly communicating through hormones, nerves, and breath. What the body feels, the mind interprets. What the mind believes, the body reflects. When stress takes hold, for instance, cortisol floods the bloodstream, tightening muscles and quickening the heart. The mind reads this as anxiety. But when you slow your breathing, stretch gently, or step outside into fresh air, your body sends a different message. The parasympathetic nervous system activates, calming both pulse and thought. Psychologists call this the embodied cognition principle. Your posture, movement, and physiology shape not just how you feel, but how you think. Sitting upright improves confidence and alertness. Smiling, even slightly, can trigger the brain's reward circuits. A brisk walk can lift mood more effectively than many quick fixes. It's a simple truth often forgotten in a digital world. Clarity begins in the body. Sleep, nutrition, hydration, and sunlight are not luxuries for the mind. They are its foundation. The brain, after all, is a living organ, nourished by the rhythms of the body it inhabits. So the next time you feel foggy, anxious, or unmotivated, check in with your body. Stretch. Breathe. Move. Because mental clarity is not something you think your way into. It's something you live your way into. One breath, one heartbeat, one mindful moment at a time. As you listen, let your awareness settle gently into this moment. Not forcing focus, just noticing. The quiet rhythm of your breath. The subtle background sounds, the stillness between thoughts. This is mindfulness, the art of being present, not chasing what's next, not replaying what's past, but resting fully in what is. The human mind, remarkable as it is, loves to wander. Research shows that almost half of our waking life is spent elsewhere, thinking about something other than what we're doing. And when that happens, we often feel less happy, less grounded. Mindfulness invites us home, to awareness. It's not about emptying the mind, but about seeing clearly. To notice each thought and feeling as it arises, then let it drift by, like clouds across an open sky. Over time, this gentle noticing reshapes the brain itself. The prefrontal cortex, our center for focus and calm, grows stronger. The amygdala, the alarm bell of stress, quiets down. The result isn't silence, but steadiness. Mindfulness isn't confined to meditation. It can live in the rhythm of walking, in the pause between tasks, in the breath before speaking. Each small act of awareness anchors you to now, the only moment that truly exists. So as you listen, there's nothing to achieve, no perfect way to be, just this simple practice of noticing and returning again and again. In that returning to breath, to presence, to yourself, you discover a kind of peace that has been here all along. There's a quiet tension that lives in all of us, a pull between what we believe and what we do. That tension is called cognitive dissonance. It's the uneasy feeling that arises when our actions, values, or self-image don't quite align. When we tell ourselves we value honesty, but tell a small lie. When we believe we're disciplined, but skip the work we promised we'd do. It's that flicker of discomfort deep within. Our mind's way of saying, something doesn't fit. Psychologist Leon Festinger first described this phenomenon in the 1950s, showing that humans are wired for internal consistency. When there's a gap between our beliefs and behavior, the mind works hard to close it, by changing what we think, what we do, or how we justify it. And though it can feel unsettling, that discomfort is often the birthplace of growth. It pushes us to reflect, to ask why we act against our own ideals. It reminds us that identity isn't fixed, it's negotiated through choices. Think of dissonance as emotional friction, the gentle heat that polishes our character. When we face it honestly, it becomes a compass, pointing us toward integrity and alignment. You don't need to fight that feeling of unease. You just need to listen to it. Because cognitive dissonance isn't a flaw, it's feedback. It's your deeper self whispering, be who you say you are. And when we align our actions with our values, when what we do matches what we believe, something quiet inside us settles. That's peace. That's authenticity. Confidence often appears effortless. We see it in the steady speaker, the calm decision maker, the person who seems to walk through uncertainty with ease. But here's the truth. Confidence isn't something you have. It's something you build. Psychologists describe confidence as the belief in your ability to succeed, shaped not by luck or talent, but by experience. It grows from a loop: action, feedback, growth. Each time you try, fail, learn, and try again, you prove to yourself that you can adapt. That's why the most confident people aren't fearless. They've simply learned that fear isn't final. Their courage isn't the absence of doubt, it's movement through it. At the heart of confidence lies something called self-efficacy, a concept developed by Albert Bandura. It's the belief that your actions make a difference. When you take small, meaningful steps and see results, your brain reinforces the connection between effort and outcome. Confidence then becomes less about perfection and more about trust. Trust that you can figure things out. Trust that you can recover from failure. Trust that your worth isn't tied to any single result. And yes, posture, tone, and body language play their part. Standing tall and breathing deeply sends feedback to the brain. I am capable. The body teaches the mind what it sometimes forgets. So if confidence feels distant, start small. Keep promises to yourself. Show up, even imperfectly, because self-assurance isn't an inborn flame. It's a fire you learn to tend. And with time, action, and compassion, it grows. There are moments when time seems to dissolve. You're writing, painting, coding, running, and suddenly hours pass like minutes. The world narrows to a single point of focus. Thought and action move as one. You are completely absorbed. This is flow, a state of optimal experience first described by psychologist Mihai Csikszentmihalyi. It's not relaxation, and it's not strain. It's the sweet spot between challenge and skill, where the task is just difficult enough to stretch you, but not so hard that it breaks you. In flow, the brain shifts its chemistry. Dopamine, norepinephrine, and endorphins surge, sharpening attention and heightening motivation. The prefrontal cortex, responsible for self-criticism and doubt, quiets down. You lose your sense of self, not in confusion, but in clarity. You're fully here. Athletes call it being in the zone. Artists call it inspiration. Programmers, deep work. But whatever the field, the feeling is the same. Effort becomes ease. Flow thrives on focus. Distractions are its greatest enemy. It asks for immersion. One task, one intention, one heartbeat of presence. And paradoxically, It's often born from structure, clear goals, immediate feedback, and the willingness to let go of outcome. When you work in flow, you don't chase achievement, you inhabit process. You're not forcing creativity, you're becoming it. And in those moments, something beautiful happens. You remember what it feels like to be fully alive, not fragmented, not striving, just deeply, quietly in tune. Because flow isn't about escaping life, it's about meeting it completely, right here, right now. Every day, from the moment you wake up, your mind is making choices. What to wear, what to eat, when to reply, how to respond. Tiny decisions, hundreds of them, quietly draining the brain's energy reserves. This gradual mental weariness is called decision fatigue, a term coined by social psychologist Roy Baumeister. It describes the decline in the quality of our decisions after a long session of decision-making. Like a muscle that tires after repeated use, our willpower and clarity diminish over time. That's why judges tend to give lighter sentences early in the day. Why grocery stores place candy near the checkout. Why, after hours of should I or shouldn't I, we end up choosing whatever's easiest. It's not weakness, it's biology. The brain's prefrontal cortex, the command center for reasoning and impulse control, consumes energy with every decision. And as that energy depletes, we rely more on habits, emotions, or defaults. So how can we manage it? Simplify what doesn't matter. Automate routine choices, meals, outfits, workflows. Prioritize deep, meaningful decisions when your mind is fresh, often in the morning. And build systems instead of relying on willpower alone. Sleep and nutrition matter too. Glucose fuels self-control and clarity. A rested brain is a better decision maker. The paradox is simple. Fewer decisions can mean more freedom, because when the small things are simplified, the mind has space for what truly counts. Creativity, presence, and purpose. Decision fatigue isn't failure, it's a signal, a whisper from your brain saying, rest, reset, and return with clarity. And when you do, each choice becomes lighter, sharper, more you. We like to think of ourselves as independent, guided by reason, untouched by the crowd. But human behavior tells a different story. We are, at our core, social creatures, wired to mirror, adapt, and belong. Social influence is the invisible current that flows between people, shaping thoughts, emotions, and decisions, often without us realizing. It can be subtle, like matching someone's tone in conversation, or sweeping, like joining a movement, a trend, or a belief system. Psychologist Solomon Asch famously demonstrated this in the 1950s. In his experiments, participants were asked simple visual questions, and many knowingly gave wrong answers just to agree with the group. It wasn't logic that guided them. It was belonging. The brain rewards social harmony. Oxytocin, the bonding hormone, strengthens connection, while rejection activates the same pain centers as physical hurt. So we learn from childhood to adapt, to blend in, to follow cues, to seek acceptance. But influence isn't only external, it's reciprocal. Just as others shape us, we shape them. Every gesture, word, and silence ripples outward, reinforcing or reshaping the norms of those around us. Awareness is the key. When we recognize these forces, we reclaim choice. To ask, is this belief truly mine? Am I acting from authenticity or approval? Social influence is neither good nor bad. It's power. And like all power, it asks for consciousness. When we use it with empathy, to uplift, to connect, to inspire, it becomes one of humanity's greatest strengths. Because though we are influenced by others, we are also capable of influencing the world, gently, through every act of awareness and kindness. Beneath every ambition, every goal, every story we tell about ourselves, lies a quieter truth, the need to belong. It's not weakness, it's biology. Humans are social by design. From the earliest tribes to modern cities, our survival has always depended on connection, on shared effort, shared meaning, shared care. Psychologist Abraham Maslow placed belonging right in the center of his hierarchy of needs, just above safety and just below self-esteem. Without it, we don't thrive, we simply endure. Neuroscience tells the same story. The brain treats social exclusion much like physical pain. Rejection activates the anterior cingulate cortex, the same region that lights up when we're hurt. It's why loneliness feels so heavy, and why community feels like relief. Belonging doesn't require a crowd, it requires recognition. To be seen, accepted, and valued, not for what you produce, but for who you are. That sense of safety allows the nervous system to relax, the mind to open, and the self to grow. Yet, there's a balance. Too much conformity, and we lose authenticity. Too much isolation, and we lose grounding. True belonging lives somewhere in between, where we can stand as ourselves, yet still feel connected to something greater. Community, then, isn't just about proximity. It's about presence, showing up, listening, contributing, and allowing others to do the same. In the end, belonging is more than comfort. It's nourishment. It reminds us that being human is not a solitary experience. We are meant to live in relation, to share stories, laughter, and silence. Because when we belong, we remember that we were never meant to walk this world alone. There's a voice inside all of us, the one that speaks when we fall short, when we make mistakes, when things don't go as planned. For some, that voice is kind. For most, it's not. Self-compassion is the quiet art of changing that conversation. It's not indulgence. It's not self-pity. It's the simple, radical act of treating yourself as you would a dear friend, with patience, understanding, and care. Psychologist Kristin Neff defines it through 3 pillars: self-kindness, common humanity, and mindful awareness. Self-kindness means replacing harsh self-criticism with warmth, acknowledging pain without amplifying it. Common humanity reminds us that imperfection is universal, that failure and doubt are not signs of weakness, but threads of our shared human fabric. And mindfulness allows us to observe our suffering without drowning in it, to see it clearly, but gently. Research shows that self-compassion strengthens resilience more than self-esteem. It lowers cortisol, stabilizes mood, and improves motivation. Because when you feel safe within yourself, you're no longer driven by fear, you're guided by care. Think of it as emotional oxygen. Before you can support others, you must breathe kindness into your own being. So the next time that inner critic speaks harshly, pause. Notice the tone, soften it. Ask yourself, what would I say to someone I love? Because self-compassion doesn't make you weaker, it makes you whole, able to rise, to try again, to live gently in a world that so often demands otherwise. And with each act of kindness toward yourself, you become a little more free. Every action we take has a reason behind it. Sometimes it's a reward. Money, praise, recognition. Other times, it's something quieter. Curiosity, joy, purpose. These 2 forces, extrinsic and intrinsic motivation, shape not just what we do, but how fulfilled we feel doing it. Extrinsic motivation comes from the outside world. It's the pat on the back, the gold star, the paycheck, the approval. It can be powerful, pushing us to achieve, to persist, to strive. But its energy fades quickly. And when the reward disappears, so often, so does the drive. Intrinsic motivation, on the other hand, blooms from within. It's the desire to learn, to grow, to explore, simply for the sake of it. Psychologists Edward Deci and Richard Ryan describe it through self-determination theory, which says we flourish when 3 needs are met: autonomy, competence, and relatedness. Autonomy, the freedom to choose. Competence, the satisfaction of improving at something meaningful. Relatedness, feeling connected to others through what we do. When these align, work becomes play, effort becomes flow, and motivation sustains itself. We no longer chase reward, we chase resonance. The modern world often pulls us toward the external, titles, numbers, recognition. But the deeper fulfillment, the kind that lasts, comes from the internal. So ask yourself, if no one were watching, would you still do it? If the answer is yes, that's intrinsic. That's the spark that doesn't burn out. And when you nurture that inner drive, your actions stop being about proving your worth and start expressing it. In the quiet of night, while the world slows and darkness stretches across the sky, the mind is far from idle. Sleep is not simply the absence of activity. It is a vital process of renewal, repair, and integration. During deep sleep, the brain clears out metabolic waste, strengthens neural connections, and consolidates memory. Dreams, though mysterious, may play a role in problem-solving, emotional processing, and creativity. Even short naps can reset focus and boost performance. Rest is equally crucial. The body and mind are designed for cycles of activity and recovery. Without adequate rest, attention wanes, decision-making falters, and stress accumulates. Chronic sleep deprivation reshapes the brain, dulls emotional resilience, and weakens the immune system. Modern life often glorifies constant productivity. Late nights, endless screens, multitasking. But clarity, energy, and even motivation depend on rhythm. Neuroscientists emphasize the importance of circadian alignment, going to bed and waking naturally, allowing the body's internal clock to regulate hormones, mood, and alertness. Rest is not indulgence, it is strategy. A well-rested mind thinks creatively, learns effectively, and responds with calm rather than reaction. Even brief moments of stillness throughout the day, a pause, a mindful breath, a walk, recharge attention and preserve clarity. So the next time your mind urges you to push on, pause, sleep, rest, allow the body and brain to renew. Because clarity is not found in constant motion. It is cultivated in the quiet spaces where the mind can breathe, restore, and emerge, sharper, calmer, and fully present. Memory is not a static storage box. It is a living process, constantly shaped, strengthened, and sometimes forgotten. Every thought, experience, and sensation leaves a trace in the brain, forming connections that influence how we recall and learn. Psychologists distinguish between short-term memory, the fleeting moments we hold in mind, and long-term memory, where knowledge is consolidated and stored. The transition from one to the other is called encoding, and it thrives on attention, emotion, and repetition. Techniques like spaced repetition, revisiting information at gradually increasing intervals, harness the brain's natural rhythm for retention. Elaboration, or connecting new information to what you already know, strengthens the web of associations that make recall easier. Visualization, storytelling, and even movement can reinforce memory by engaging multiple senses. Sleep plays a critical role too. During deep sleep, the brain consolidates learning, transferring experiences from short-term circuits to long-term networks. Without rest, information remains fragile, like footprints on sand before the tide comes in. Equally important is mindful attention. Multitasking and distraction weaken encoding. Focusing fully, even for brief periods, allows memory to take root. Curiosity and emotional engagement also enhance retention, because the brain prioritizes experiences that matter to it. Learning is, in essence, a dialogue between the mind and the world. Each effort, reflection, and pause strengthens the pathways that carry knowledge from moment to moment. So when you study, practice, or explore, slow down, engage deeply, rest, reflect, repeat. Memory is not just about storing information. It is about cultivating understanding, connection, and the ability to call forth knowledge when it matters most. Life is unpredictable. No matter how meticulously we plan, there will always be forces beyond our grasp. The weather, the actions of others, the unfolding of time. Yet the mind craves certainty. It wants to control outcomes, to map the unknown, to feel safe. This desire can create an illusion, the sense that we can steer everything. Psychologists call it the illusion of control. It's why people overestimate their influence, why we fret over outcomes we cannot change, why anxiety blooms in the fertile soil of uncertainty. Recognizing this illusion is not resignation. It is clarity. It is learning to distinguish between what we can influence and what we cannot. The moment we release the need for total control, we conserve energy, sharpen focus, and open space for acceptance. Stoic philosophy and modern psychology both offer guidance. Focus on your intentions, not outcomes. Commit to actions aligned with your values. Let results emerge as they will. Mindfulness practices cultivate this awareness, helping you observe thoughts without clinging. Paradoxically, accepting uncertainty increases resilience. When we stop resisting what cannot be changed, we respond more fluidly to life's challenges. We act with calm instead of fear, with curiosity instead of rigidity. Control, then, is not about mastering the world. It is about mastering how we move within it. By embracing uncertainty, we reclaim presence. We learn that peace is not found in perfect outcomes, but in the quiet confidence of knowing that, no matter what happens, we can face it. And in that acceptance, freedom quietly blooms. Change is uncomfortable. Even when we know it is necessary, even when we crave growth, the mind resists. This resistance is not weakness, it is biology. Our brains are wired to favor the familiar, the predictable, the safe. Habits, routines, and patterns are energy-saving devices that keep us functioning efficiently, but they also make transformation feel difficult. Psychologists explain this through the concept of cognitive inertia, the tendency to cling to established behaviors and thought patterns. Every new habit requires extra effort, attention, and patience. At first, the mind and body push back. Discomfort is natural. It signals that you are stretching beyond what feels familiar. Awareness is the first step. By noticing resistance without judgment, we soften its grip. Change becomes a process, not a battle. Small, consistent actions, tiny habits repeated daily build momentum. Behavioral science shows that microshifts accumulate, rewiring the brain and making new behaviors easier over time. Emotions also play a role. Fear, doubt, and self-criticism often accompany change. Recognizing these feelings as part of the journey rather than obstacles allows us to act despite them. Curiosity, patience, and self-compassion are the tools that guide transformation. Remember, change is rarely linear. There will be setbacks, there will be plateaus, and yet, each effort, no matter how small, shapes the trajectory of who you become. Transformation is not about becoming someone else. It's about aligning your actions with your values, expanding your capabilities, and stepping gently into the next version of yourself. And in that unfolding, patient, persistent, and mindful, growth quietly becomes possible. Goals are more than tasks on a checklist. They are signposts for the journey of becoming, reflections of what we value, who we wish to be, and the life we hope to create. Psychologists and behavioral scientists emphasize that goals are most effective when they connect to identity, not just outcome. The difference is subtle, but profound. Outcome goals focus on results. I want to lose 10 kilograms. I want a promotion. Identity goals focus on who you are becoming. I am someone who values health and consistency. I am a person who approaches challenges with curiosity. When goals align with identity, motivation is internal, resilient, and enduring. When they do not, progress feels fragile, and setbacks can quickly discourage. The science of habit formation also plays a key role. Small, consistent actions, tied to cues, routines, and rewards, embed new behaviors into daily life. Goals that are specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound, SMART goals, provide structure. But the heart of lasting change lies in seeing yourself as the type of person who lives those goals naturally. Reflection and adjustment are equally important. Check in with your intentions regularly. Celebrate alignment, notice drift, and gently course correct. Progress is rarely linear. Ultimately, goal setting is not about perfection. It is about creating a path where actions, identity, and values converge. A path that feels meaningful, sustainable, and authentic. When identity guides intention and intention guides action, goals stop being external pressures and begin to feel like natural steps along the journey of becoming your best self. And with that alignment, growth flows quietly, steadily, and powerfully. Beneath the surface of thought, beneath the chatter of daily consciousness, lies a vast and mysterious landscape, the subconscious mind. It is silent, largely unseen, yet it guides much of what we feel, decide, and do. The subconscious stores memories, patterns, and learned behaviors. It governs habits, reactions, and intuition. When you act without thinking, when you react instinctively, when a certain thought feels familiar without a clear reason, that is your subconscious at work. Psychologists suggest that it influences up to 95% of our daily actions, quietly steering the conscious mind. This hidden engine can be a source of both limitation and liberation. Old beliefs, self-doubt, or unresolved experiences may quietly dictate choices, keeping us in familiar patterns. Yet, by bringing awareness to these patterns, we can reshape them, forming new associations and habits that support growth and purpose. Techniques like mindfulness, visualization, and affirmations work by gently interfacing with this deeper layer. Repetition and emotional engagement create new neural pathways, slowly reprogramming the subconscious to align with conscious intentions. Dreams, intuition, and creative insights often arise from this realm, offering guidance we may not consciously understand. The subconscious is not separate from you. It is an intrinsic part of your mind, a library of experiences and instincts waiting to be understood. By learning to listen, observe, and guide it, you gain access to an immense reservoir of insight and potential. In essence, your conscious self is the navigator, and the subconscious is the engine. When both are in harmony, actions feel effortless, decisions clear, and personal growth flows naturally. And in that quiet partnership, transformation becomes not just possible, but inevitable. Gratitude is simple, noticing what is good in your life, Yet, in its simplicity, it holds profound power. Psychologists have found that regularly practicing gratitude rewires the brain. It strengthens neural pathways associated with positive emotions, reduces stress, and increases resilience. Gratitude shifts focus away from scarcity, what's missing, what's unfair, and toward abundance, the people, experiences, and small moments that sustain us. It doesn't require grand gestures. A deep breath on a quiet morning, a warm smile from a friend, the taste of your favorite food, even noticing the feeling of your feet on the ground. Each acknowledgement is a thread weaving a tapestry of contentment. Gratitude also deepens connection. Expressing appreciation to ourselves, to others, or to life itself fosters empathy, kindness, and trust. It reminds us that we are not alone, that life is a network of gifts, seen and unseen, that support our journey. Importantly, gratitude does not ignore difficulty. It is not blind positivity. It is presence, noticing what is good even amid challenge, holding space for both struggle and appreciation. This dual awareness cultivates balance, perspective, and emotional resilience. Daily practices, journaling, reflection, or simply pausing to acknowledge a single blessing can transform perception. Over time, gratitude becomes a lens through which life is viewed. When we live with gratitude, the world shifts subtly yet profoundly. Scarcity softens, contentment grows. The ordinary becomes extraordinary, and in that quiet awareness, we find that abundance was always there. We just needed to notice it. The journey of becoming your best self is not a race. It is not a destination. It is a lifelong inward exploration, a gentle unfolding of potential, awareness, and purpose. At its heart, this journey is about integration. It is learning to align thoughts, emotions, behaviors, and values, to live in a way that feels authentic, whole, and meaningful. Every choice, habit, and reflection is an opportunity to connect the fragments of self into a coherent, resilient, and compassionate identity. Psychology reminds us that growth is rarely linear. There will be success and failure, clarity and confusion, calm and storm. Each experience is a teacher, shaping understanding, strengthening resilience, and revealing who we truly are beneath societal pressures and internal doubt. The practices we have explored, emotional intelligence, mindfulness, gratitude, self-compassion, goal setting, and more, are tools along this path. They do not transform us overnight, but gradually, with consistent reflection and mindful action, they harmonize the mind, body, and spirit. The small everyday choices, how we respond to challenge, how we treat ourselves and others, how we cultivate presence, accumulate, quietly shaping character. Becoming your best self is also about patience. It is the awareness that perfection is an illusion, and that authenticity, kindness, and curiosity are the markers of a life well lived. It is about embracing both strengths and limitations, courage and vulnerability, action and rest. Ultimately, this journey inward is not solitary. Connection, empathy, and shared humanity illuminate the path. As we grow, we lift others and are lifted in return. And so, with each mindful step, each act of self-awareness and care, we move closer to the person we were always capable of becoming. A life lived fully, deeply, and authentically, one moment at a time.